All right. Listen, I want to get excited, but I think it's fair at least. Well, I don't think it's fair. This is just my stance on it. This is how I feel about it. So, everything that's going on with the Steelers' defensive coordinator situation, Terrell Austin might end up being fabulous. He might be great. He might be the 56-year-old coach they bring in here, and he makes it all right defensively. They start stopping people in the run. They skyrocket up the rankings of the number one defense in the NFL. We think Steelers, we think defense, and this guy gets the ship all righted. But, big but here. Here's where I am with it. Right now, Mike Tomlin deserves zero. Not 1%, not 2%. Zero benefit of the doubt in hiring assistants. None at all. Because of how they've recently worked out. And particularly in-house hires. It's okay, and this is exactly where I am with it. You feel how you want to feel. Everybody can feel how they want to feel. I am skeptical until I'm proven otherwise because I'm going by history and it not working out with Mike Tomlin. I went this morning as I was sitting here getting ready for the show and went over a bunch of assistants and jotted their names down and thought, okay, when they came in here and were brought in here, and there were holdovers from the Cowher era, right? Mm-hmm. But the guys that Tomlin specifically, most of these guys, hired, did their career and did they get better and this football team get better after they were brought in? Matt Canada, still
jury's
in the balance,
out, but
right?
Yeah.
I think that Keith Butler, in the way that it ended, in the signal calling stuff, in the way that at 66 years old he retired, it sort of soured at the end. Again, I'll give him jury still out, maybe with Keith Butler, even though he's not here anymore.
I just don't know if he was actually the defensive coordinator or not, right?
Right. Coach Randy, a horrific disaster. I don't know how else to put it. And this is a guy that Ben talked Mike Tomlin into hiring. They hired him. He wasn't a good football coach. Todd Haley, for whatever reasons, personal reasons, conflicts, whatever, I thought a really good football coach and a play caller. It just couldn't work out, right? I mean, do you agree to that? Or
I mean, statistically, it worked for a few years, right? And it saved Ben from himself and kind of started that last third of his career on the right note. But, no, it didn't end up working in the end. The
revelation that Dick LeBeau didn't call plays at the end and Mike Tomlin said, I'm going to call them. That, to me, doesn't sit well at the end.
No.
I don't know who it sits well with, if anybody. You know, it's a Hall of Fame guy. Adrian Clem was doomed to fail from the very beginning. You and I sat here the day he got hired and go, this is what we're doing here? That's who they're going to replace? That's what's happening? They stunk on the offensive line, so essentially they're just going to elevate the assistant offensive line coach and hope they get better. Adrian Clem is the first coach I can remember in coaching history that was told, why don't you just go coach somewhere else before our season's over?
You got another job? Great. So we don't have to pay you any severance?
Right.
By all means. You need somebody to pay for the moving van?
Joey Porter, albeit in his one shining moment in that playoff game when he went on the field and drew a personal foul penalty from Adam Jones, that was great. Other than that, did he ever make a linebacker better? You know, what did Joey Porter do other than be Mike Tomlin's buddy and got a job on the staff? I can't, and got in trouble on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and by the way, my name's Chris Muller. Come after me if you need to. But no, Joey Porter, another of Tomlin's guys. It didn't work out. Carnell Lake left in really weird terms. Okay, so Carnell Lake is like, you know what, I'm out of here. Kind of a Steeler lifer almost, but I'm out of here. He replaces him with Tom Bradley, who his brother's the team doctor.
Right.
They're very close to the Rooneys, and Scrap can't even hang on for a couple years. That, to me, was also one of those, what the hell happened here on the staff?
What's crazy to me is that do you want to?
I have more.
Yeah, finish the list.
Sean Surratt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't succeed as a coach here. Scotty Montgomery was supposed to be an offensive wizard, guy that was going to be. This guy is destined to be an NFL play caller. He is going to be an offensive coordinator. He is a sharp young mind in the NFL. Mike Tomlin talked all that. Guy was out of here in a year and a half, went to ECU, wasn't very good. I don't even know what – was it Duke for a while? I don't even know what Scotty Montgomery's doing now. It was billed to us. He was great by Mike Tomlin. Fell off as quick as he rose. Kirby Wilson left for a lateral job in Arizona, I believe. And Ike Hilliard still, right now, is a work in progress, and the receivers have gotten worse.
Yeah, they haven't gotten better anyway.
When I put all that into one canister and I say – You show me the Mike Tomlin coaching tree of the guys that got better. I can't find a whole lot, but I can come up with all these dudes, and I can say, I know that Terrell Austin has a great pedigree, and I think he might end up being good, but I'm skeptical until proven otherwise, and I'm totally fine to feel that way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, unless the defensive coordinator legitimately changes, i.e. Mike Tomlin actually lets Terrell Austin be the defensive coordinator, I will go in with cautious optimism that things are going to change and improve for the better. What's crazy to me is I was thinking about all the assistant coaches that have come and gone over the years under Tomlin, right? And I can't even get a grip on every single last name that has come and gone. But the one that stood out to me that actually did work when they brought him in and actually did help, although he was a former head coach at the time, he wasn't an up-and-coming assistant, was Mike Munchak and what he did for the offensive line. And now here we are with an opportunity to maybe think about going after bringing Munchak back, right? And I don't want to devolve into that conversation because it'll happen plenty between now and whenever Mike Munchak decides to do whatever he wants to do. Would it be great to bring him back? Sure. Is that realistic? I don't know.
And the BA retirement. Did I get that in
You
there?
did mention that,
Okay.
yeah. So, but I guess my point here is that when Mike Tomlin sets about actually bringing somebody in who it looks like is a really good and accomplished coach, and Terrell Austin is a good defensive coordinator. He's been to the Super Bowl a couple times as a defensive coordinator. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. The same could be said for Munchak, right? When he was brought in as the offensive line coach. When Mike Tomlin commits to bringing someone like that in and letting them be a legitimate part of the process, and Munchak was. He was an important part of game planning, even as the offensive line coach, even though he didn't have an OC title or anything like that. When he commits to letting his coaches do their job, it works out sometimes, especially when they're, again, accomplished veteran coaches. I cite Munchak, and again, I'll cite Terrell Austin, who's getting the promotion. That's what the hang-up is on this for me, Colin, is if Mike Tomlin still insists on being the guy, right? The guy who does all of it come game day, who wants to cook the meal, right? On defense, then I don't know how much change we're going to see. What they need is someone to come in and actually own the defense. And if that's why they brought Terrell Austin in a couple years ago with the eye on eventually replacing Keith Butler, which I think is why they brought him in, knowing that Keith Butler would not be around forever, if they actually plan on giving him the keys to the defense, then I think we'll get an improved defense, a much improved defense against the run especially. But the jury is out on that. We won't know what to expect in that regard until we get into the throes of the regular season.
But here's the deal. What makes I'd love to kind of move over to your side of it and say, all right, but what gives anybody any indication right now that Mike Tomlin wants to cede any power to
nothing.
anyone?
That's why I'm saying.
And that's where I am with it. And I'm not saying that you're making the case one way or the other, but for people who are saying, all right, here's a guy that is all of a sudden going to have his come to Jesus moment. You know what? We're not doing well against the run. Oh, you know what? We're not winning playoff. What makes his seat not even makes his seat hot? What makes his thought process change? What does that for him?
Maybe there's a discussion, hopefully with someone named Rooney, who says, you know what, Mike, you might have to consider, if you're going to promote Terrell to defensive coordinator, you might have to consider actually giving him complete control of the defense. Yeah, sure, you're going to be there in meetings, and you're going to be a part of this or a part of that, but when it comes time to actually execute things on Sundays, maybe you got to be willing to hand that headset over on defense. That's my hope, is that somebody would have that conversation. We talked about it at the end of the year. We've talked about it in relation to the last 3 playoff losses and how ugly they've been. I think I would hope that conversation has been had. Again, there's a reason I call it cautious optimism about Austin taking over as defensive coordinator, because until I see that he's actually taken over as defensive coordinator, it could only be cautious optimism, not full-out optimism.
What's so emblematic of the Steelers being stuck in either one of these two things, the Steelers being stuck in sort of an antiquated way, or Mike Tomlin not caring about the way that he should, is one thing. If they really thought that Terrell Austin was the guy, why, whenever they hired him 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, why didn't they that day say,
oh, they should have,
Keith Butler, you go, this is our guy? There's not some probationary period for Terrell Austin.
Blind loyalty. The same reason Randy Fichtner was given another year as offensive coordinator after Matt Canada was hired as quarterbacks coach. I mean, it's blind loyalty by Mike Tomlin to guys that he's known for decades. That's the only reason Randy Fichtner stuck around for another year as offensive coordinator. That's the only reason Keith Butler stuck around for a couple more years as, quote-unquote, I make the air quotes with my fingers, defensive coordinator, because Mike Tomlin felt a blind sense of loyalty
at some
to those
point,
guys.
and I think Mike Tomlin's a really good, maybe not a great coach at this point in his career, a really good one. At some point, you're the common denominator, not those 15 names I just read off. You're the common denominator. And Mike Tomlin's inability to, one, either work with other people or two, delegate power and make the structure better by simply yielding some power is the problem right now.
That's the issue for me, is the delegation. You've got to be willing to hand the keys over to your offensive and defensive coordinators and let them actually run the show. Now, maybe it crashes and burns as the offense did this year under Matt Canada. In that instance, that's fine. You know what you have now, and you got to move on from it. If it happens on defense, you know what you have, you got to move on from it. In the instance of Keith Butler a few years ago, you knew what you had in Keith Butler. You knew that he wasn't really the defensive coordinator. You were making the calls, Mike Tomlin, on defense. So just move on from it, rip the Band-Aid off. But it's the glacial pace with which change takes place in this organization. And it's still that way. We're in 2022, and the Pittsburgh Steelers still operate at a glacial pace in some cases.
And look what the Ravens did. They had a guy that was doing good things on defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They told him, get the hell out of here. They did. They said, you got to go. There's no coach in waiting. There's no guy behind you.
They moved on to the next guy, is
Correct.
your point. Yeah. I wonder how much of that was scapegoating with all the injuries they had on defense.
Could have been.
But your point remains the same in that when they decided to move on, they moved on to the next guy. They didn't create some sort of defensive coordinator in waiting.
Right.